In a quiet rural town in the United States, David lives with his abusive father, William, without his mother who left when he was 5. At school, we see that David has a crush on a girl named Millie, who dreams of traveling the world. Knowing this, David once gives her a snow globe with the Eiffel Tower inside. Millie loves the gift, but the moment is ruined when Mark shows up, calling David a dork and throwing the snow globe onto the middle of a frozen lake. Determined to get it back, David steps onto the ice. But the ice isn't strong enough, and suddenly it cracks. The freezing water pulls him under. Panic takes over, and in that instant David disappears from the lake, only to reappear inside a library. Confused and terrified, he decides to ignore what just happened and quietly heads home. But the moment he arrives, William starts yelling at him for being late. So David runs to his room and locks the door. Furious, William begins forcing the door open. And just as he's about to break in, David vanishes, appearing once again in the library. That's when it finally hits him. David has powers. Without wasting time, he returns home, grabs his savings, and escapes to start a new life. But first he stops by Millie's house, leaving the snow globe behind so she'll know he's alive. After that, David moves to the city. He rents a cheap, dingy motel room and begins experimenting with his strange new ability. At first the jumps go badly. He slams into trees, crashes into walls. But eventually he learns the trick by focusing on photos of places he wants to go. His first real destination is the Empire State Building, a place filled with memories of his mother, Mary. Once he feels confident, David visits a bank during the day just to memorize the inside. Then that night, he jumps straight into the vault and steals everything. While David celebrates in his tiny room, the bank discovers the robbery. Soon after, a mysterious man named Roland arrives, posing as an agent from the National Security Agency. Roland has seen cases like this before. He knows about people like David, jumpers, and he's certain one of them is responsible. 8 years later, David is living the dream. He now owns a luxurious penthouse in New York City, filled with expensive furniture and priceless items. His control over his powers is so precise, he even teleports to the kitchen instead of walking. His walls are covered in pictures of landmarks, each one a gateway to somewhere new. Some days he spends relaxing on top of the Great Sphinx of Giza, enjoying a private picnic. One evening, David jumps to London and walks into a pub. Inside, he casually teleports behind the bar just to impress a girl. But someone notices, another jumper named Griffin. David doesn't realize it and simply leaves with the girl. Meanwhile, somewhere in a tropical jungle, another jumper suddenly appears. But before he can react, a net of wires snaps around him. The trap keeps tightening, preventing him from teleporting. It's a setup. Roland and his men have been waiting. They call themselves the Paladins, hunters who believe jumpers are an abomination. Without hesitation, Roland kills the young jumper. Then his phone rings. Their next target has just jumped. Moments later, David returns to his apartment only to find Roland waiting inside. Roland has collected every bundle of cash David hid in bank vaults over the years. David orders him to leave. Instead, Roland strikes him with a special baton, sending 1,000 volts of electricity through his body. The shock disrupts David's powers, limiting his jumps to just a few feet. A brutal fight breaks out. After a desperate struggle, David barely manages to teleport into a hidden room behind one of his walls, snapping the cable connected to the baton. Roland follows the cable and begins smashing through the wall. But David doesn't wait. He grabs a pile of money and jumps away. Refusing to give up, Roland studies the photos in David's apartment. Then he sends his men to every location David usually visits. While searching further, Roland discovers something interesting. An old photo of Millie. Seconds later, David appears back in his childhood room. Hearing a noise downstairs, William rushes over, confused and emotional. He admits he sometimes feels like he's losing his mind and tells David he can come home anytime. David simply reassures him he isn't crazy. Then he disappears again. The next morning, David considers visiting William for real, but he can't bring himself to face him. Instead, he heads to Millie's house. When Millie's mother opens the door, she's stunned to see David alive and immediately hugs him. She tells him Millie now works at the local bar, so David heads there. But the moment he sees Millie again, older now, he freezes. Fear takes over. He tries to leave quietly, but runs straight into Mark, who instantly recognizes him and starts asking questions. His loud reaction catches Millie's attention. She admits she saw David earlier and was waiting for him to finally speak. Mark grows jealous and tries making a move on her. That's when David punches him. The situation explodes into a fight that spills outside. During the chaos, David shoves Mark through a fence and teleports him away while nobody is watching. They reappear inside the very vault David robbed years ago. David warns Mark not to push him again. Then he jumps away, leaving Mark trapped inside as punishment. Afterward, David returns to the bar, and finally he sits down with Millie. But she admits something that surprises him. She gave up her dream of traveling the world. Reality caught up with her. She needed a job and a normal life. David tells her he works in banking and invites her to come to Rome with him. Millie happily accepts, but someone else hears the whole conversation. Griffin, who just happens to be in the same bar. Meanwhile, Roland arrives at the police station pretending to be from the Central Intelligence Agency and punches the detective when no one believes him. Then he interrogates Mark, promising he actually believes the crazy story about teleportation. Relieved to finally be believed, Mark tells Roland everything about David and Millie. Roland immediately calls his men and orders them to head to Italy. A few hours later, David and Millie arrive in Rome and check into a very luxurious hotel. Millie starts getting suspicious about David's real job, but he swears he's telling the truth. The two spend some time getting close before leaving the hotel to explore the beauty of the city, while Griffin quietly watches them from a distance. Eventually, David and Millie try to enter the Colosseum, but it's already closed for the day. While Millie is distracted, David secretly teleports inside to unlock a side door, then pretends he's simply found it open. The couple wanders through the ancient structure, enjoying the history around them, while David repeats the same trick whenever they reach a locked door. But when he tries to access the lower area, he suddenly runs into Griffin, who is casually relieving himself on a pillar. David tries to ignore him and walk away, but Griffin instantly teleports in front of him. He reveals that jumpers exist all over the world and angrily scolds David for dragging a normal person into this, while recklessly jumping around and attracting the wrong kind of attention. At that exact moment, the paladins storm into the Colosseum and begin chasing them. David is immediately struck with a baton that paralyzes him, but Griffin is far more experienced with these hunters. Within seconds, he teleports away and quickly knocks them out one by one. Before leaving, Griffin finally explains the paladin organization to David and disappears. Suddenly, a Colosseum employee runs and screaming for help. Using the glowing jump scar Griffin left behind, David leaps through it and tracks him to a secret hideout hidden in the desert. Furious, Griffin reminds David he left Millie alone, and David instantly jumps back to rescue her. But it's too late. The police are already waiting outside and arrest them both. 8 hours later, the officers are still interrogating David. However, they can't formally charge him until a magistrate from the United States Embassy arrives. To David's shock, the magistrate turns out to be his mother, Mary. She secretly frees him from his handcuffs and tells him to run before more paladins arrive. David tries to chase after her, demanding answers, but a police officer blocks his path. So David teleports the officer all the way to Egypt as punishment. Then he returns to the station and tells Millie the police simply let them go. Millie finds that hard to believe, but David asks her to trust him and takes her to the airport. Confused about why they're running if everything is supposedly fine, Millie demands answers. David finally shows her the bag full of money, but still refuses to explain anything. Instead, he tells her they can't be together anymore. Heartbroken and feeling betrayed, Millie boards a plane and flies back home alone. Meanwhile, Roland's team calls to report they were defeated, almost as if someone knew they were coming. Roland then visits William, who pretends he hasn't seen David in 8 years. William admits that even if he did see his son, he wouldn't help the police, which Roland clearly doesn't appreciate. Moments later, David arrives at Griffin's hideout and discovers Griffin spends his time hunting paladins. According to Griffin, the paladins have been doing this for centuries, responsible for events like the Salem witch trials and the Spanish Inquisition. Griffin warns that when they can't catch a jumper, they target the people they love. That thought immediately terrifies David. Millie should still be safe because she's on a long flight. So David teleports to his childhood home, only to find William lying dead on the floor. Overcome with grief, David panics and teleports his father straight to the hospital. But the doctors can't save him. Consumed by rage, David storms into the police station and threatens Mark until he admits he told Roland everything about their hometown, including David's feelings for Millie. Realizing Millie is now in danger, David knows he must stop Roland before her plane lands in the United States. He teleports back to Griffin's hideout and tries to steal his research on the paladins. Griffin stops him, warning that Roland isn't like the other hunters. He's far more dangerous. That's when David suggests they work together to defeat him. Griffin refuses, saying he always works alone. Then Griffin teleports away to Tokyo, and David immediately follows him, still begging him to team up. Instead of answering, Griffin steals a car for fun and drags David along, showing him how to teleport the car forward along the road. David has never jumped with something that large before. Griffin then admits he once knew a jumper who tried teleporting an entire building and died trying. After hearing David ask for the millionth time, Griffin finally agrees to help, on one condition. Once this is over, David never contacts him again. Together, they teleport to the airport, but they're too late. Millie has already landed and left. David rushes to the bar to ask about her, where a waitress reveals Roland has also been asking questions about Millie. Panicked, David teleports straight to Millie's apartment, relieved to see she's still alive. But Millie refuses to talk to him. Meanwhile, David hears paladins approaching outside. With no time left, he finally begins telling her the truth, even teleporting across the room to grab the snow globe and prove his powers. The sight terrifies terrifies Millie. She tries to run away, leaving David no choice but to grab her and teleport both of them to Griffin's hideout. Griffin is furious. He explains the Paladins possess a machine that can reopen wormholes using the scars left behind by teleportation. At that exact moment, Roland and his men arrive at Millie's apartment and activate the machine. Back at the hideout, David and Griffin hide while waiting for the wormhole to appear. As David studies Griffin's research, he discovers something shocking. Griffin has been investigating his own mother, because Mary is a Paladin too. At that moment, Roland arrives and captures David with his electrical wires. Just as he's about to kill him, Griffin suddenly cuts in with a flamethrower and attacks Roland head-on. To counter Roland's technology, Griffin teleports into the city, grabs a bus, and brings it back, dropping it straight onto Roland. But Roland survives, unshaken, so Griffin blasts him again with the flamethrower, forcing him back toward the wormhole. Then Griffin follows him through it, continuing the fight at Millie's apartment. Meanwhile, Millie cuts the wires and frees David. She makes him promise he'll leave her alone after taking her home. David agrees, but quietly confesses she has been his only love since they were kids. The moment is interrupted when Griffin returns with the Paladin machine, believing they're finally safe. But Roland uses Griffin's jump scar and fires a hook through it, capturing Millie and pulling her into the apartment just before the scar closes. David tries to go after her, but Griffin activates a bomb, planning to wipe out all the Paladins at once, Millie included. Refusing to lose her, David grabs the bomb and teleports it away to the Colosseum. Griffin immediately follows, and the two begin fighting over the detonator while teleporting across the world. Eventually, they land on top of the Empire State Building. David throws the detonator away, forcing them both to jump after it. At one point, Griffin even teleports a truck into a battlefield in Chechnya to hit David mid-fight. Ignoring the war around them, David grabs Griffin and slams him into a live electrical pylon, trapping him with the current. Afterward, David teleports back to Millie's apartment and finds her tied up. But the moment he tries to free her, Roland attacks again with the baton and captures him too. Roland prepares to finish him, but Millie apologizes for misjudging everything. That moment gives David the push he needs, and suddenly his powers evolve. In an instant, the entire room disappears from the building and reappears in the middle of the Huron River. David struggles underwater, disoriented, but Millie swims to him and helps him regain control. They jump again, reappearing inside the old library. Millie wakes David with a slap, and he realizes Roland is still after them. David quickly teleports Millie somewhere safe, then grabs Roland and drags him into an isolated cave deep in the Grand Canyon. Before leaving, David makes one thing clear: he's not a killer. He could have left Roland to die, but he didn't. Days later, David follows clues about his mother to a snowy house. There he discovers Mary has built a new life and is even raising another child. Mary admits she left because she knew about his powers. She refuses to abandon her duty as a paladin, but she hugs him and tells him she still loves him. The only thing she can offer him now is a head start. David accepts the truth: his own mother is the enemy. He leaves, reunites with Millie, and the two of them head somewhere warm and peaceful to begin a new life. The Yindi. Like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.